Recently, I created a team around my favourite young striker in FM, so I decided to do the same, but this time around my favourite young number 10 on the game in Junior Krupi. So I'm going to buy him on Football Manager and I'm going to build a team around the young lad. And I've decided to do this with Atalanta in Italy. It's a club I'm rather fond of in the Serie A, and their side is good but definitely not a favourite to win the league. So our first task is to catch up and eventually challenge the big boys for the league title. But the ultimate goal is to try and make Junior Krupi a European champion, and the biggest goal of them all, win the Ballon d'Or. So with the 18-year-old signing for Atalanta, the challenge begins. Now system-wise, to get the best out of Krupi, I think a shadow striker is the way to go. It's going to allow him to score goals and get assists at the same time, and we kind of need the team around him to not be taking all of his thunder. So I'm thinking to begin with, let's try a complete forward on support. We've got the likes of Scudetto and Di Catalare who can kind of assist with that. Wingers on either side. We got one deeper, one further up because Adamola Lookman can get involved. And we got a Segundo Volante and a ball-winning midfielder in midfield and behind. Transfer-wise, coming in alongside Junior Krupi, we have Pavlovic from AC Milan. He was transfer listed, didn't get a lot of game time, and to be fair, he is really good. We can see if we can make him our left-sided centre-back going forward. And so, sorting him inside that defence, we've got the likes of Scalvini who comes in. We've got a really good midfield so far. Adamola Lookman and Scamacca up front to support Krupi in that shadow striker role. I think we've got a good team to start off with. And to kick things off at the start of the season, young Junior Krupi managed to bag himself an assist in one of the first games of the season in a 1-0 win against Bologna. The season did start a little bit ropey though. We defeated Frosinone 3-0 with Scamacca getting himself a brace. Unfortunately, we lost at home to Cremonense. Things weren't going too well for us at the start of the season. In the two Champions League games we kicked the season off with, we also lost those two as well. Our first big test in Italy didn't go too great either when Inter Milan defeated us 1-0. The result looked tight, but the game certainly didn't. We were kind of dominated. And unfortunately, we're picking up silly draws like this one against Como, this one against Lecce, and our league season is looking rather bleak, despite us still being in 5th place. I think that's more down to other teams also playing terribly like Napoli. It should be said though that this guy is only 18 years of age and nowhere near ready for first team football yet. We're just giving him a little bit of a head start, but he has come back with 2 goals and an assist in those 10 games so far, so maybe we can't be too harsh on him. Especially because soon after he picked himself up another goal, this time against an AC Milan side, and this time it was in a 2-1 victory as well. In fact, we were starting to see his name dotted around in a lot of the games, whether it be goals and assists, and the young lad was picking up a good reputation for himself and a cracking average rating going in towards the Christmas period. Results wise in the league, it started to pick up. We lost against Juventus, but only 1 loss in the 2 months really helped us. 2 other draws against Lazio and Napoli, but the rest are wins. And we're still climbing up the table and sat in 4th place. Even in Europe, we're doing well. We just defeated Manchester City 1-0. Although the brighter days in the Champions League kind of ended, and we ended up losing our last 2 against Stuttgart and Copenhagen and missing out on the playoff spot. But still, this is very early days in our challenge, and our task this season really is just to get Junior Krupi bedded in, and he's certainly doing that and scoring a lot of goals. Unlike when we were with Porto and Samuel Marodion, the task of winning the league is kind of out the picture right now. Trophies are not in the front thought of my mind. It's kind of a season or 2 in the future. Right now, it's just building a team and trying to find out what works around Junior Krupi. That being said, we have been going on a very good Coppa Italia run and find ourselves in the semi-final, where in the first leg against Bologna, we've managed to pinch a 2-1 lead in the 93rd minute, where we then went to Bologna and managed to get a 1-0 win with a fantastic goal with Bellanova crossing the ball to Di Catalare at the back post. There I was suggesting that we're not really looking for trophies, and now we're in a cup final. But the cup final is to be played against Italian giants Inter Milan. And after we went in at half-time 0-0, we came out firing and managed to pinch an own goal to put us 1-0 up from Bastoni. And on the 58th minute, we caught Inter Milan napping on the break. Junior Krupi was unlucky, but the tackle ended up putting Di Catalare in and doubled our lead. And somehow we lift the Coppa Italia in the first season. Again, I never really expected it, but it's really welcoming, and obviously it helps keep our jobs if anything does seem to start tailing off. It hasn't done though. We've actually done quite well in the league. We've lost against a few teams that you kind of would expect, but in the Serie A, we're finishing in 5th place and on the same points as Lazio in 4th. It's actually been a really good season. And for Junior Krupi, it's been a great season. He's about to turn 19. The development is kind of progressing, but not as much as what I'd hoped just yet. But it's been a cracking season overall with 10 goals and 8 assists and a really favourable average rating of a 7.14. The board are backing us, giving us another £35 million to play around with, and I know we've won the cup, but I don't know whether this tactic needs tweaking or not. It just depends on the type of players that we can attract. And I decided to spend 99% of my budget on my first signing in Samuel Ricci, a fantastic Italian centre defensive midfielder. He's only 23 years of age and already improves our team. I like his player traits. I kind of like everything about him. For £35 million it is a lot, but he had a cracking season last year at Torino. But to bring more names in, I had to sell some more players. Retegui, after just one season, leaves the club for £9.5 million. Said Kolasinac also leaves for another £9 million, as does Ben Godfrey for a few more million, and we've managed to raise in total £27 million. And that is going to be spent on Mateus Sule. Now, this winger is phenomenal for his age, 22, and he has an unbelievable amount of potential. I'm going to try and slot him in on that right-hand side in that right midfield spot that we've got right now, and I think this could be a game changer for us in Season 2. Now, unlike what my father would have done, I resisted tinkering the tactic too much. I decided to keep it as it was. We did eventually, obviously, win a trophy last season, despite having some rough patches. But these 3 players in the lineup right now, I want to keep in there as much as possible. Down that right-hand side is going to be crucial, and of course, we want Krupi to keep his development and keep playing as many games as possible as we go into our first game of the season against Cremonese. And it was a good start to the season for our new signing Mateus Sule, who managed to bag himself a goal on his debut in a 4-1 win and a cracking finish as well. In fact, it's been a really good start to the season for Atalanta, as well as Adamola Lookman and Gianluca Scamacca, who have both scored in each of our games so far, and they've all been wins. So far so good at the start of Season 2. Obviously, I'm not expecting Krupi to win it anytime soon, but I'm just thought I'd check the Ballon d'Or, and so far we have Vinicius Jr. winning it this year, and somehow Hakimi won it the season before. However, I have no doubt if he keeps up with the development and he keeps just playing well, eventually Junior Krupi can find himself lifting that trophy with bangers like this. In fact, that was scored in a game where he got himself a nice little brace against Fiorentina, and we've had a good start to the season. We lost, unfortunately, to Inter Milan at home, and at home to Juventus 3-0, but outside of that, only a 2-2 draw, which was rather disappointing. It's been the only result that I've really wavered at so far. Our weakness against the lower end of the table clubs is that although we start to dominate the games in terms of possession and attacking threats, we aren't as deadly as what we should be. And that is costing us games. We're very lucky here against Lecce to win 1-0 thanks to Junior Krupi and that finish that you just seen, but we had 19 shots to their 0. We only scored 1 goal. And it becomes very apparent when you look at our recent results. We've got a 1-0 win here against Milan, which is great, but again, it's only 1. It's just defensively we're relying on ourselves too much. 1-0 loss to Parma there. Another 1-0 against Monza. We should be battering them. 1-0 against Sassuolo, 1-0 against Lecce, and a 0-0 against Como. We simply aren't scoring enough goals, but thankfully it's still not costing us too bad, and we're only sat in 4th place. Statistically, Juventus has scored the most goals as we go into the new year with 45 in 18 games, but we're all the way down in 10th with just 26. For a team in 4th place, that's not very good. Especially when you consider in the other 2 statistics in the fewest conceded, we're down in 5th place there with 16 and 18, and most clean sheets, we're 2nd, but with 9. It was, of course, Europa League football this season. We managed to do well and finish in 2nd place, only losing to Maccabi Tel Aviv and drawing to Sparta Rotterdam, and winning 6 games in total, including a very nice win in Portugal against Braga. We've also started our defence of the Coppa Italia this season in the 3rd round, knocking out Monza after defeating them 2-0. It was a 1-0 win in the quarter-final when we played Pisa. They were also down to 10 men, and again, we're not scoring enough goals. However, in the first leg of the Coppa Italia semi-final, we went to Lazio, and although they went down to 10 men, we still scored 3 goals and took home a 3-2 lead, putting us in the driving seat of retaining our Coppa Italia trophy. After defeating Ludogorets in the Europa League round of 16, we go through to the quarterfinals, and it's off to Turkey as we face Fenerbahce. We've hit a couple couple of bad results recently with some draws popping up and a couple of losses to Inter Milan and Fiorentina, but yet in the league we are still in 4th place on 58 points, still going for those Champions League spots. But of course the most ideal way of qualifying for the Champions League next year would be to win the Europa League, and we've put ourselves in a cracking spot to do just that. Eliminating Fenerbahce, beating them 3-1, and the 2-1 came away from home. However, in the semi-final we come up against our old pals Juventus. We've done it again against Lazio in the semi-final second leg, beating them 2-1, which means we beat them 5-3 on aggregate and go through to the Coppa Italia final to face Napoli, a team we recently just lost 2-0 at home against, unfortunately in the Serie A, but we're still holding on to that 4th place with 4 games remaining. But in the final, it was Napoli who took the lead once again, and this time from our defensive mistake, as Osman laid the ball onto Kvaratskhelia, who smashed it in off the post. But we repaid the favour when we pulled one back right on the stroke of half-time thanks to a defensive mistake, but you probably won't recognise the goal scorer because we've got a lot of players missing. Napoli were then awarded a penalty right after half-time, and Kvaratskhelia stepped up to see if he can score his second, and unfortunately for him, Connor Secchi made the save. And the game went to extra time where Junior Krupi smashed in the corner and it was headed in to find the winner. And somehow we've won back-to-back Coppa Italias. We weren't, however, as competitive in the Europa League semi-final, as unfortunately for us, Juventus scored the only goal in the first leg. And when we travelled to Turin, we got battered 4-1 and lost 5-1 on aggregate. We tailed out the seasons with 2 draws and 2 wins in the Serie A, which meant we actually finished behind them in the league as well, sat in 4th place, but it's Champions League football next year. And I can't exactly be too displeased about the season. We've just won another trophy with our second Coppa Italia in 2 years, and we finished in 4th place, which, as I mentioned, is Champions League football next year, and we got to a semi-final of European competition. It's not a bad season whatsoever. My main concern for the season was the development of a couple of our youngsters. Of course, Junior Krupi being the main one. The development has actually been fantastic. His output hasn't been great, with just 5 league goals and 5 assists, 8 and 11 across the season. The average rating was nowhere near as good as what it was last year. However, Matthias Sule seemed like it was a really good buy. He got himself 10 assists and 8 goals this season, and the development, as you can see again, is quite impressive. What's not so impressive is that Atalanta are only giving us £22 million next year to keep improving this team. And so I had to be rather clever with my money, and the first signing coming through the door cost me £13 million, and it was for the Croatian centre-back Josip Stanisic. The 26-year-old can also play naturally at right-back and can cover a number of positions that we use on the pitch. To get the next signing over the door 4 days later, we had to sell a couple of clauses, but Bidstrup joins for £20 million from Red Bull Salzburg, and the Danish midfielder can play really well in that ball-winning midfielder in defensive midfield. 2 players went out in Torre and Hien for around about £8 million, and that gave us the transfer budget that we are left with as we start the season. Tactically, we have decided to switch it around though, with Junior Krupi going to a wide shadow striker, and we've got an advanced forward now instead of a complete forward up front. To begin with, the change seemed to work rather well. We were a little bit more forthcoming with our strikes, and Scamacca went through on goal against Lazio to open the scoring in a 2-0 win. The change definitely seemed to welcome more goals. Adamola Lookman scored himself a hat-trick in a 4-0 win against Torino. We were without Junior Krupi at the start of the season though, and unfortunately we also lost to Inter Milan, but still, we scored 3 goals away from home against them. Not to mention, we were 2-0 up at half-time, 3-2 up as we went into injury time, and they scored 1 in the 91st minute and in the 97th. But then, unfortunately, that loss seemed to spark a bit of a bad run. We only won 2 games from that. That was against Juventus and Frosinone, and the rest of the results were rather poor. Ironically, Junior Krupi was back in the lineup, and he was pretty much the only player that was really putting in performances, linking up quite well with Scamacca to score against AC Milan. But that bad start does see us down in 11th place in the Serie A, with Juventus currently in the lead, with their only loss coming against us. In the Champions League, it's a completely different story. We have gone 3 wins from 3 so far, including beating a very good Porto team with Matthias Sule open the scoring. And yes, he still plays for them, but he didn't play against us for some reason and hasn't really played much at all. What a mistake that is for Porto. And speaking of Ballon d'Or winners, Kylian Mbappe has lifted the award this season, with Lautaro Martinez coming in second and Harry Kane coming in third. In fact, the first points we dropped was in game week 4 of the Champions League against Paris Saint-Germain in this absolute 4-4 corker, where they scored again in the 95th minute. but we got the equaliser in the 96th. Back in the Serie A though, Junior Krupi was back in form and he was leading the line for us to score more goals and start picking up more points. And although some results weren't going our way, we were definitely scoring more goals than what we were last season and picking up more wins than draws. And unfortunately for us, it still meant that we were down in 6th place because of our bad start, but it was something to build on going into the second half of the season. With another quiet January transfer window, we lost 2 more games in the Champions League to Atletico Madrid and Man City, but thankfully the early 3 wins that we managed to pick up was enough for us to qualify for the playoffs. However, in every other competition, our team and Junior Krupi has been on fire and won every single other game, even winning the Super Cup after extra time against Juventus in the final and winning every other Serie A and the 3rd round of the Coppa Italia, and we've got Inter Milan to play at the end of the month. And you might have noticed that they were champions last season and the season before that, so they're on 3 in a row right now in terms of the Serie A title and the team to beat in Italy. So imagine my surprise when we smashed them 3-0 at home with a fantastic assist for the final goal by Junior Krupi and slotted home beautifully by Scamacca. In fact, he was on fire throughout the whole of February, scoring a brace against Arsenal in the knockout playoff round first leg. We lost the second leg 1-0 at the Emirates, but we still progressed 2-1 on aggregate. And we've put ourselves in another Coppa Italia semi-final after we won the quarter-final against Sassuolo 2-0 with Matteo Sule scoring a perler. But we are looking at a really tricky March with back-to-back games against Manchester City in the Champions League round of 16 and back-to-back games against Napoli, one in the Serie A and one is the first leg of the semi-final. When Manchester City turned up in Bergamo for the round of 16, they scored after just 9 minutes, but we came back and we got ourselves a 2-1 advantage going into Manchester. But unfortunately, that's where our run ended, as Manchester City were too tough for us to beat and they stuffed us 3-1 at home with some terrible defensive mistakes. In the league match against Napoli before we faced them in the Coppa Italia semi-final, Junior Krupi found Sule and Sule found Ederson to score the only goal of the game. But in the cup match, it was all square at half-time going into the second leg. Shockingly, our form has been so good that with 2 games in hand over Juventus, we could go top of the league if we won both of those fixtures, which of course meant we were due a loss to AC Milan. Hopefully though, we can rely on our amazing cup form so that season 3 isn't so much of a disaster. Or not, as we failed to score and Osimhen gets the winner in extra time. Despite the loss to Milan, unfortunately the draw to Empoli, in the Serie A we are still in second place and just 3 points behind Juventus with 4 games remaining. And we are in such good form going into these last 4 games as well and playing so well, and even Junior Krupi's popping up with a goal or 2. And in the final 4 games we won 3 out of 4 and drew to Udinese 3-3, which unfortunately is the only game that cost us, and Inter Milan somehow managed to win the league with Juventus dropping all the way down to 4th place. And despite that disappointment, it is still really positive that we've been able to put up a title fight in season number 3, and the growth has been good as well. Junior Krupi is starting to actually look like a first team player. His development has been fantastic and his goals this season, 12 in 36 games, is certainly his best season so far. But I am really concerned with the size of our squad. We've only got 18 players in our first team right now, and the transfer budget of £15 million is not going to help that situation much. A bid came in for Ederson from Leicester for £31 million, and to be honest, I think that is a good enough deal to accept. However, the player himself thought otherwise and he rejected the contract to move to Leicester. Coming into the club from Saudi Arabia is Roger Ibanez. Now, this guy actually used to play for Atalanta for a couple of seasons. In fact, they were the team that brought him to Italy, so it's nice that he's come back on a free transfer back to the club. There was more Ederson bids and I just have to accept I've kind of come to terms with him leaving now. And maybe that's because I've already seen a replacement I'd like to bring in, but eventually he moves to Al Fatah in Saudi Arabia for about £25 million. But I do have a predicament to make. You see, I only have £24 million in my bank right now in the transfer budget, and I could just accept this João Gomez deal, which is 26-year-old defensive midfielder from Wolves who were relegated, and I could get a deal right now. However, Baleba is a player that if I manage to make up a little bit more money I could bring in. He's younger and his potential will be better than what João Gomez is sat at right now. And so by front loading the deal with some installments, I managed to get the deal done for £48 million in total, and Carlos Baleba is now an Atalanta player. And as July the 1st hit, we have another player joining the club, Yasser Asprilla, a deal that I managed to get done before all of those shenanigans happened, and the Colombian midfielder comes in from Girona for £14 million. Now, if time to turn Junior Krupi into a world-class attacking midfielder. He needs some decent player traits, so I'm training him right now to get into the opposition area. And we are set up with both Baleba and Krupi trying to play as many games as possible for their development and seeing how this season plays out. Now, the Champions League group stage wasn't too bad. We lost 3 games against Newcastle, Bayern and Benfica, with Benfica stuffing us 4-0. We drew 2 games to both Juventus and Girona, and we won 3, meaning we do finish in a playoff spot down in 17th. But the playoff spot was as far as we got as Ajax knocked us out on penalties. Domestically, we've managed to get ourselves to another cup final against Napoli this time round, and in the Serie A, we still are in a shout with a title push, but with 4 games left, we are 8 points behind Inter Milan. However, something strange was about to happen. In one of the 4 games that we had to play, we had to actually face Inter Milan ourselves, and we beat them 3-0 away from home. And out of their 4 remaining games, they only managed to win 1 against Torino. And that meant we finished on level terms in the Serie A and had to play a playoff. And in the first leg of the playoff, it wasn't great. Inter Milan came to our stadium and unfortunately they picked up just the 1 goal, and that was all they needed to pick up the win. When the second leg came around though, I was in shock. And to be honest, I'm absolutely fuming. Because in the second leg, arguably the most important game of the season, where if we win by 2 goals, we of course win the Serie A, we have so many players out on international duty that we can't even field a first team squad. Like, I don't know how this is allowed to happen. We're only in the 31st of May, but have a look. All of our players, all out on international duty. How has that happened? It did look like Inter Milan had a similar problem, although they still had a lot of their first team, and unfortunately we could only muster a 2-2 draw, meaning we lost on aggregate 3-2, and the Serie A once again was won by Inter Milan. But at least we went and won the Coppa Italia once again, and it was in the 93rd minute thanks to new signing Aspria's header. Goals-wise, Scamacca was leading the charge, however he is wanted, and 29. It might be time to cash in now. Junior Krupi has developed quite nicely, and he has a fantastic season of 19 goals and 19 assists. Di Catalare is actually pulling in quite big numbers as well, and Baleba, who of course we nailed in as many times as possible, actually played really well, and has had a really good developing season. Bids started to come in for Scamacca, and it just felt like the right time, especially for £64 million to accept for the Italian striker. And I decided to spend the money well, bringing in the legendary Robin van Persie's son, Shaquille van Persie, who has developed quite well and looks like a really promising striker and only 21 years old. Another Dutch player joined the club, only 22 as well, and Enoch Masteras, who is a really good defensive midfielder who can also play centre-back and right-back. He fills a lot of roles for us. And we welcomed another Danish midfielder this time round in Morten Hjulmansson, defensive midfielder on a free transfer, 29 years of age, coming in from Sporting. And without question, these signings came in through the door and hit the ground running, especially Shaquille O'Neal, who struck up a lovely partnership already with Junior Krupi. And we start the season 4 wins from 4 without conceding a single goal. This has been a fantastic start. Junior Krupi's even got 3 goals himself, as well as 3 assists and 2 player of the matches in just those 4 games already. Not to mention Van Persie, as I said, has hit the ground running. He's got 5 goals in 4 games. I mean, those could be Ballon d'Or numbers, who knows, but Kylian Mbappe has won back-to-back trophies this season. In the Champions League league phase, we were much better this year, with 2 losses to PSV and Bayern Munich, only 1-0 each, a 1-1 draw against Manchester United at home, and 5 wins, including a 3-1 win against Paris Saint-Germain. Annoyingly, although we were playing really well and had 56 points alongside Napoli and Roma, Juventus were unbeaten still after 23 games and have 63 points. We're trailing them despite the fact that Shaquille van Persie has 26 goals so far in those 20 games that he has played in the Serie A. He has been absolutely outstanding, and the only thing that we've got to be wary of is that he doesn't win the Ballon d'Or instead of Junior Krupi, because at the minute he's on fire. Back to the Champions League, and in the round of 16 we lost unfortunately to PSG after they scored a 95th minute winner in extra time. We pretty much cemented ourselves in another Coppa Italia final after beating AC Milan 5-1 in the semi-final first leg. Or so we thought, because we somehow lost the second leg at the San Siro 5-0. again in extra time. And yet again, despite us being absolutely incredible in the Serie A with just 3 games remaining, Juventus only really need 1 more point after only losing 1 game all season to lift the title, and Shaquille Van Persie has 32 goals. I mean, that is absolutely insane for a new player coming into league in 31 games. And Juventus quite impressively win their remaining fixtures, finishing on 101 points, with us finishing 11 points behind them. However, this is still a really positive season for us. Junior Krupi really enjoyed his relationship with Shaquille Van Persie. 21 assists and 16 goals this season, a cracking little bit of development, but this man has been on fire for us, and what a pickup that was when we lost Scamacca. Again though, we've only got £10 million in the transfer budget. They're not really backing us, but what can we expect? We're not exactly winning many trophies and getting very far in Europe. To raise some money, I tried to sell Charles Di Ketelaere, but unfortunately he rejected the move, and that means I had to kind of cancel a couple of the deals that I had going on right now, and a couple of these players were really good. Although we did get Angel Ojeda join for £13 million, who can play in that centre attacking midfield role or on the left. I've had a little bit of a play around, and I'm kind of intrigued by how this 3 at the back formation does, with 2 defensive wingers and 3 ball playing defenders. The early signs are that it's really powerful, especially going forward, because Shaquille Van Persie managed to score 2 goals within 3 minutes in the opening day in a 7-0 win against Genoa. He ended up scoring 4 goals himself, and we even got a 2-0 win in the next game as well, after a few really good results in friendlies. There were a few hiccups along the way. We have lost 3 games in total and drew 6, but we're still in the title fight, and Junior Krupi has been playing amazing. He's got 11 goals so far this season and has the highest average rating across the season. Look how good he's getting. My biggest concern is that it's not very good in Europe or in the Cups. We're already out in the 3rd round of the Coppa Italia. In the Champions League phase, we lost 3 games against Arsenal, Porto and PSG, but we did pick up 5 wins and some really good results. However, we went straight into the knockout playoff round, and unfortunately we lost to Roma after losing 4-0 in the first leg, which meant we were relying on the Serie A to have a good season. We're still some way behind Juventus, 5 points in total, but Junior Krupi is leading the goal scoring charts and the highest average rating. However, the next 2 months is going to be make or break. We've got Lazio, Milan and Juventus up next, Roma and Inter in April, but our May seems to be okay, so if we can get through these 4 fixtures here, we have a shot at the title. And after getting back-to-back wins against Lazio and AC Milan, we travelled to Turin and scored the only goal of the game in a 1-0 win. In fact, we actually won 8 on the bounce after getting knocked out of the Champions League, and that puts us right at the top of the league, just 1 point ahead of AC Milan with 4 games remaining. And to be honest, we just did not stop winning games. This tactic has been phenomenal for us in the Serie A. Bellanova's crossed in there for Van Persie, and those link-ups just seem to keep happening. And we just kept winning and going on to lift the Serie A title for the first time after coming so close a couple of seasons ago. Only by 3 points as well, ahead of AC Milan, but 90 points in total, and look who won the Golden Boot. Our very own Junior Krupi, with Shaquille Van Persie finishing in 3rd. Our star boy has turned into a world-class player, and this formation has definitely helped get the best out of him at 23 years of age. That season is by far his best, and we hope that we can capitalise on more. But maybe, would it be enough for this man to then win the Ballon d'Or? After only making a couple of signings last year, including Ojeda, who actually had a really good year with 12 assists and 7 goals and 39 starts, we have only £4 million next season, which means I really have to think about who I'm going to sell to drum up more money to really rejuvenate this team into season number 7. My biggest concerns, however, is that tactic is just not suited for the Champions League. We're going to come up against somebody who's way better than us, and defensively, we're going to get caught out. Speaking of getting caught out, I've just caught you out. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet, and yet you're really enjoying this content. So sort it out. And if you have already subscribed, you can go one better and turn on that notification bell. Finally, we managed to get rid of Charles Di Ketelaere, £27 million. That's a good deal, but I wish it was last year, because some of those signings we missed out on were really good. So I'm determined to make this very much a rebuilding season. Luca Montanaro has just joined the club, 20 years of age. He's a bit of a wonder kid from Fiorentina for quite a low cost, and already he looks quite good. As does this this 21-year-old Portuguese player, Jose Pedro da Silva Pinto. Alright, he's got a bit of a mouthful of a name, but he's a really good left midfielder for now that I think could come into the starting 11 in that position there where Ademola Lookman is about to leave. Because our other option in that role is Yasser Asprilla. Well, he was, but now we have sold him for £48 million to Manchester United. It's money that I could not turn down, because that money has allowed us to bring in more players. We have got this man here for £8.5 million who can fill in right midfield or in DM. We've got Mateo Milo, who's a backup striker for us, with Shaquille Van Persie being our only striker at the minute. We've also brought in a backup goalkeeper because we really need one. And finally, we have got Pascal Favero joining the club for £24 million. And this wonder kid can also play anywhere down that right hand side. Some more positivity of we have proudly announced the completion of the club's move to the Atalanta Stadium, and the new stadium, which has just been built in 2030 season, has a capacity of 35,000 but can be expanded to 51,000. So I'm thinking we stick with the tactic we've just won the league with, see how it plays out a second season in a row, because if we are really struggling in the Champions League or in the Coppa Italia, then we know that we've got a tactic to fall back on, the one that we were using previously, and kind of build upon that four at the back formation. One thing we do have to check though is how good Junior Krupi can be in this new formation, because of course we need to get him to win a Ballon d'Or. And despite him having a miraculous season last year, he didn't even make the top three, with Vinicius Jr. finishing first, Nico Williams second, and Evan Ferguson finishing third. It hasn't been a bad start for us, only dropping 5 points in 10 games. However, AC Milan have won all 10 games, and Juventus are still ahead of us as well. My biggest concern though is the Champions League. We've lost only one game, which we did get battered against Chelsea, but we've drawn 4, and 2 of the games we really shouldn't be drawing against Celtic and Augsburg. The positive side of it though is we're in the quarter-final of the Coppa Italia and should be able to go through against Catanzaro. And in the Serie A, at the end of January, we've really pulled it back. And although AC Milan are still really good and top of the league, they're only winning, I think, over head-to-head right now. Back in the Champions League, we did very well to get through the playoff round, winning 7-4 against Monaco on aggregate. But that's when it fell apart for us and we were eliminated from the competition, and why I think we need to avoid the 3 at the back, because we were drawn against Real Madrid and they battered us 4-0 on aggregate. We were also eliminated from the semi-final of the Coppa Italia, and unfortunately our season really dropped off because we lost games against AC Milan and Juventus either side of that Coppa Italia semi-final, and that has really pushed us out of contention of winning the league, 8 points now behind AC Milan. And as much as I do enjoy the 3 at the back formation, we are creating a lot of chances. Defensively, it's not at its best, and unfortunately we need to focus on competition wins, because Krupi's never going to win himself a Ballon d'Or if we're finishing second and getting knocked out in the round of 16 of the Champions League. And so because of the complete lack of money coming into the club right now and the fact that we're in a lot of debt, we're having to sell a lot of our players. Morten Hjulmand has a £12 million offer that I'm going to accept. Mateus Sule, he has been a stonewall for us recently. Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to try and negotiate a little bit more for him, but ultimately I'm looking to sell. Hjulmand decided to reject the contract offer, but Mateus Sule has gone to PSG for 52 million. And that's allowed me to bring in some new players like Ruben Quiros, who looks like a really good attacking midfielder who could be a backup for Krupi, but not only that, he can play in all the positions in midfield and from the left. More players left the club, including Raul Balinova, who went for £8.5 million to Villarreal, and Roger Ibanez, who went back to Saudi Arabia for a second time for £15 million. Now, we did bring in Jose Carlos from Palmeiras for £14 million, mainly just a replacement for Roger Ibanez, but we have a new guy coming in that is going to go straight into our first team. Fabrizio Tropiano is a left-back wonder kid from Roma, Italian, and he is fantastic. He goes straight into the team, and we're looking at changing things around to a 4-2-3-1 for this season, with Junior Krupi in that shadow striker role. We got Montanaro on the right back and Tropiano on the left back. Let's see how this one plays out. And in the first game of the season, it seemed to play out very well. Although the opponents weren't the strongest, we just seemed to play absolutely fantastic and Shaquille Van Persie got his name on the score sheet. We won 3-0, created 22 shots with 10 on target, and almost every player other than the right back had a 7 or above average rating. We continued playing extremely well and smashing the likes of AC Milan 2-0, Juventus 1-0, but then randomly picked up losses against Salernitana 3-0 and Napoli 4-0. Sometimes it just didn't make no sense, but we were still top of the league by 7 points, although Milan do have a game in hand roughly halfway through the season. Our Champions League phase was okay. We lost 3 games to Leipzig, Liverpool and Chelsea. We drew to Barcelona, which was a good result, and we won 4 games in total, meaning we do finish in a playoff spot. And in that playoff round, the weirdest thing happened. We went back-to-back 0-0s and had to win on penalties. After recently losing to Roma 1-0, I decided to switch back to our original tactic to see how that one played out, and we battered Napoli 5-0, and now I'm in a predicament. We played so well that I think I might just have to stick it out and see how this one plays out while the 4-2-3-1 can sit on the bench. Once again in the Champions League, we were unfortunately paired against Real Madrid, and again they battered us with a 4-1 second leg win, which meant it was 7-2 on aggregate. We did, however, come back from behind against AC Milan in the semi-final of the Coppa Italia and beat them 2-0 in the second leg, meaning we went through to the final 4-3 winners. In the final, we faced AC Milan and it was 1-1 all the way up until injury time, when the most bizarre goal ever was scored and the keeper Restes dived and it came back and hit him on the arse and went in. It's things like that I really hope doesn't get taken out of FM25 when we eventually get the release on the Unity graphics engine. But a win's a win. It's another trophy to add to our trophy cabinet, and in fact the 4th Coppa Italia that we have won as manager. But it wasn't just the Coppa Italia that we were putting on fantastic performances. In fact, in the Serie A we were also untouchable and just won so many games. Outside of March, where we had 3 losses in a row against Real Madrid and Lazio in the league, and of course the Milan first leg in the semi-final, we won pretty much every game, only drawing 2 against Sassuolo and Napoli to go on to become champions of Italy once again with 92 points. And Shaquille Van Persie also had himself another golden boot. A phenomenal season, 31 goals in total for Shaquille Van Persie, who has developed into a really cracking striker right now. But Junior Krupi, 23 goals, just 7 assists, which does surprise me, but still he looks absolutely mental and a fantastic player overall. Carlos Baleba's grown into the player that we know he can be, and overall the squad is looking really strong, with a lot of the new gens that we have brought in turning into fantastic players for us. But it doesn't look like we're going to add many more to our team, because again the board have only given us £1 million, and that is thanks to £86 million in the red. So that has meant we've decided to try and sell a few players. Morten Hjulman didn't go last season, but hopefully he does this year for £12.5 million. After Hjulman left, we also decided to sell Masteras. £40 million is an offer that I could not reject, and there's a lot of clubs that came in for him, and yes, he's fantastic, and yes, he's played a lot, but it's going to allow us to use the players that were on the fringe of our side that we brought in recent years. Shaquille Van Persie is great, but he's kind of our only out-and-out striker, so I've spent £42 million bringing in Gabriel Silva from Paris Saint-Germain. He already looks better than Van Persie, and he has the player traits I enjoy, and he hasn't really played a lot of games for PSG last season, just 5, and I think that if we give him some game time, he could be even better than what we've already got. With the very little money that we've got left, I've decided to bring in Noel Buck, who is an American midfielder who can kind of play in a lot of positions that we are using in our tactic. He's still got a nice bit of age behind, but he's £6.2 million. That's a bargain, really, and if you consider the amount of roles he does fill, then it's well worth the deal. We're also going into the season pretty much using the same tactics as what we started off with, but I've changed it to a defensive style of play because I really feel like in Europe we're getting caught out quite often. And we thought this paid off because we started off the season really well with a nice little 2-0 victory. Noel Buck played quite well too, and Junior Krupi bagged the opening goal. This win was against Spezia. We had 25 shots, 7 on target, and they only had 1. But then the warning signs began to arrive because we then lost the next game 3-2. Noel Buck did get himself a brace though. Our first big challenge come up against Manchester City in the Champions League, and yeah, it didn't pay off at all. In the league, it was rather hit and miss. We go and beat Inter Milan 4-1 and then lose to Juve 1-0, followed by a 7-0 against Parma, 6-0 against Hellas Verona, and then we draw to Roma and lose to AC Milan. The inconsistencies across our season already have been quite alarming, but yet we're still only 2 points behind Inter Milan, who are currently leading the Serie A, and yet we just beat them 5-0 in the Super Cup semi-final. Still no sign of Junior Krupi or any of our players, to be honest, in the Ballon d'Or, which is kind of worrying as well. Jude Bellingham lists the trophy this year and Gabriel Martinelli the year before. Once again, we were rather underwhelming in the Champions League. We lost 2 matches against Leipzig and City, drew 3 in 3 of them, games we should be really winning, and we won 3 games with a 5-0 against Midtjylland, 1-0 against Porto, and a 3-1 against Tottenham. That then sees us go to the knockout playoff leg against Manchester United, and in the home leg, which was the first leg, we took a 2-1 lead thanks to the opening goal by Silva. It is fair to say he has struggled though. In the Serie A alone, he's only got 7 goals and 5 assists, starting 26 games, but I guess we are playing rather defensive. The second leg at Old Trafford, being defensive, really paid off. It was a 0-0, which meant we won 2-1 on aggregate, and now we go through to the round of 16 and we've got Barcelona. In the Serie A, we're still chasing Inter Milan, and when we eventually went to Milan to face them, it was a 1-1 draw thanks to a really cracking equaliser by De Silva Pinto. To be honest though, we could have done with a victory there because we are 4 points behind them with a game in hand, and that win would have really put us in the driver's seat to win the Serie A again. And also, yes, you might have noticed, Sammy was in the league, so now we're in trouble. Back in the Champions League, I couldn't quite believe what happened in the first leg against Barcelona. They came to Atalanta and we absolutely destroyed them, and Junior Krupi picked up a brace. The score was 3-0 at half-time, and the final score being 4-0 to take to Barcelona, which we did lose 2-0, but hey, we're still through, I ain't complaining. It's another tricky tie in the next round if we gotta go to Chelsea, but league form-wise, we've dropped more points to Roma. However, Inter Milan have been on a bit of a bad run. We've somehow leapfrogged them and now 4 points clear at the top of the league. The Coppa Italia went to extra time when in the 121st minute we had a corner and Montanaro managed to score the winner. And our 2-1 aggregate lead was matched with Milan's 2-1 aggregate lead, and that's who we'll face in the Coppa Italia final. Back to the Champions League though, and yet again we have made the home ground our fortress. We were fantastic, destroying them 3-0, and Junior Krupi got the opener. The second leg was much better than when we went to Barcelona. It was a 1-1 draw, and we progressed through to the semi-final, which is to be played against the other Italian side left in the competition, Napoli, and whoever wins that faces either Arsenal or Leipzig. In the league though, we have still been really strong, winning as many games as we possibly can, and we've opened up a gap at the top of the league. And I don't want to speak too soon, but we're on course right now to win a treble, and if we know anything about Ballon d'Ors on Football Manager, winning a treble gives you the best opportunity to actually lift it with one of your players. And with the form that he is on, Junior Krupi, 16 goals, 22 assists this season, with easily the highest average rating in our team, you'd like to think that if one of our players did win it, it would be this young man. But we've got to get there first, and this time we're playing away from home in the first leg, which kind of goes against what we have done, but we still managed to pick up a 2-0 win, with Van Persie scoring both. And in the second leg, we simply shut them out, drawing 1-1 and winning 3-1 on aggregate, and we go into the Champions League final, and we've got to face Arsenal. In the meantime though, we cruised on through to lift the Serie A title once again, which now makes that 2 in a row and 3 in total, just pipping Inter Milan at the post. But of course we had to defeat AC Milan in the Coppa Italia final, and yet again we put on a fantastic performance, scored 4 goals and only conceded 1 to lift the trophy. And of course that means that is 2 out of the 3 trophies we need to complete the treble, with the last being the Champions League. It's taken us 9 seasons to get here, and straight from kickoff we're in trouble as Arsenal completely break through us and Gonzalo Ramos opens the scoring. Thankfully though, we weren't waiting too long before an equaliser finally came. Our high press led to Junior Krupi picking up the ball, and an inch perfect pass to Silva leveled the scoring. Van Persie, who was on the pitch playing from the left, then scored a very dodgy penalty. And just before half-time we had one more opportunity when Stanisic found Baleba. Baleba's first time pass to Favero was beautiful, and it's 3-1. Second half, it was important to do what we have done all season and shut teams out. And that is when we found Silva with a little bit of space to cap off a 4-1 final win. Yes, it's taken us a long time, but we finally have our Champions League win, which means we have done the treble. And now we just need to sit back and wait to see if Junior Krupi can go on to lift the Ballon d'Or. And so I've simulated the 1st November to find out whether Junior Krupi can win the Ballon d'Or this season as a treble winner for our Atalanta side, Florian Wirtz. He wasn't even in the top 3. Florian Wirtz won it for Chelsea. I think we knocked them out in like the quarterfinal. And somehow he managed to win. I mean, it is frustrating. He got 20 goals in 40 appearances. If we look at how good Junior Krupi was last season, 13 goals and 16 assists just in the league from centre attacking midfielder, but 18 goals and 26 assists in all competitions. He didn't even take penalties for us. That's how good he was. And yet he cannot even get in the top 3 of the Ballon d'Or. And sometimes I really do think this award is just done by reputation. And that's obviously a shame. Also really obvious. Either way, I've really enjoyed building a team around Junior Krupi. And if you want the save game file, page.com/MegaLootGaming, or on the YouTube channel membership page where you can also watch videos early before they are fully released onto YouTube, you can. They'll save game files be there. Maybe you want to steal a tactic, that will be on there as well. But thank you very much for watching. Keep the support coming. Let me know what you want to see next, and why not watch this video right here, because we did exactly the same with my favorite striker, Samu Omorodion.